Pani, Baniowie, dzień dobry. That's almost all of my Polish. Welcome all the ones who woke up from the hour of the anaconda. It's a pleasure for me to have the honor to stand here representing the European Network of Parents Associations and one of the rather unique networks among Europe where EPA, my association, is a member and contribute to volunteering with a focus on lifelong learning and active citizenship. Just to give you another brief overview of the structure of a European network, this is a slide showing the members association. Here, that's mine. Very diverse combination, but all of them are in one or the other way engaged in learning and education. And so that's the richness of this network, to have this diversity together and to learn about the different angles of view, the different scopes, and make the best out of it as an added value. So one of the basic things that you probably all know is that volunteering as a value goes far beyond the things that easily can be brought into GDP views. Its employability still is something that is probably focused in many contexts, but rarely there is a focus on active citizenship, the effects of social cohesion, the European identity that we actually live on our networks down to the ground, bridging the attitudes of national governments quite effectively. And of course, it's the personal enrichment and development of the individuals who do volunteering themselves. So what is the role of and value of volunteers in education? One thing, and it is probably also an old-fashioned knowledge, but it is not really recognized in all of the discussions. Education is much more than school and universities, formal education. I hope you remember the abbreviations. And the European qualification framework has brought up the idea that we should recognize non-formal and informal learning as important, and still I see a lack of impact of this novel concept. And we have this terminology of learning outcome, the orientational learning outcome, and we see a strong demand on getting towards more holistic approaches. Let's say, get out of the PISA tube and see more what is valuable when you learn. EUCIS LLL can be understood. So EUCIS is the European Civil Society, and LLL evidently is the lifelong learning. So you can summarize its stakeholders in education, and one of the very important messages that all of us agree is, let's look at the learners. Let's see the benefits of the learners when we talk about education and put them and their benefits in the center. You judge yourself on what policymakers normally say when they talk about education. I've never heard a message like this. And we should, of course, as a consequence, have a stronger look on the learning process and its quality itself prior to the training and education aspect. It's as a system evaluation aspect. So now that's one of the core missions. Look into the field of education and training as the offers are in the market, and you will find that there is an incredible amount of volunteers involved in the system as learners, as educators, and of course parents in the formal education process are evidently in a very specific role. If we don't talk about the formal aspect of learning and learning supplies, we know, and it has been mentioned in lectures before but not pointed out that strong, that volunteering itself is learning by doing. So that's one very important thing, and it really makes you develop basic competences and transversal and soft skills. So it's the one things that have been pointed out as prior targets of education by the EQF. So as a consequence, all kinds of volunteer associations have a demand, or even already have implemented consciousness or with a program some learning opportunities for the volunteers. And there is a need to provide training programs, and if you take my little bit semantic mania, I put there the terms seminars, academies, to give it a wider range. A training normally focuses very much on useful skills. It should be a wider scope if we subscribe to this wider impact of volunteering. So what EUCIS frequently uses as a term, and that is not understood, as I just recently learned in a conference in Warsaw here, what is a learning provider? It's this nice term that tells you it's not to give a building with a label that's a teaching institution, but to go towards the learner and provide a good support, a good stimulus, input, information, whatever is needed to have good learning. So I think that's a very encouraging way to look at learning provision. So there is a need, as I just concluded, for a promotion of non-formal learning and its value. And let me introduce to you a recent concept that is developed within EUCIS and may, if it works, be very interesting for other volunteers associations outside. There has been a feasibility study and some discussion is going on how to fund and implement it. A European Institute of Lifelong Learning, which of course should cover all the aspects, formal, non-formal and informal learning, to offer better conditions among these learning providers, and to address the quality aspects in a flexible way that is applicable on non-formal learning sceneries, which is not probably the same thing. I suggest it could impact quite a bit on the evaluation of formal learning institutions, because it will have this learner-centered view. And the idea to have national coordinators to again bridge European policies to the regional and local suppliers and probably bridge over the national educational policies is one additional aspect. So that's a more or less future perspective, but I really hope that we will get it going together. So what has EUCIS done to address the European Year of Volunteering? There was the General Assembly outside the period of Polish presidency, but also in Poland. And these were the titles of the main workshops that we were doing there. We were asking for the role of volunteers within the educational organizations and society. We were talking about recognition and validation of volunteers' skills and competences, and we will be continuing to do so because that's a wide field and it has not been tackled deep enough now. We were discussing transnational dimensions of volunteering, mobility, another topic that I think was very much in the awareness of the Alliance. And of course, the direct link of volunteering into the mission of active citizenship and the development of European democracies. There were two additional workshops, and I think I must mention one that was to discuss a little bit about the structural challenges of organizing volunteers' work to keep flexibility and sustainability in a balance. So I will show you now in a very brief overview what were the recommendations that were worked out as a follow-up of our General Assembly. And if I do in a quick way, I'm quite nice in time. I was monitoring myself. And if it's too quick for you, you will of course receive the slides, and it's better to read without this time pressure. So just see the main titles, and I will probably point out some of the most important issues in the sub-items. So again, it's, I think, quite in line with the findings of the Alliance. It's the development of legal frameworks that are reliable and transferable, international. The quality standards should be done in a way that the ownership on quality standards is with the involved persons. I think that's very important, because quality can be a very rigid thing if someone else tells you what you should account for. Within the context of learning, of course, the recognition of the acquired skills and competences and knowledge is very important. I could have a long discussion about the terms to use here, but I will not do it, because competences covers more or less all. If we believe the EQF, if we believe the EU 2020 terminology, some skills came up, and I'm still not quite sure whether the skills are the same, that were a part of competences, or whether it's a bigger term. I suggest it's probably something that is the more economically useful part within the competences. Therefore, we forget the rest, especially the attitude, which I don't subscribe to as a good thing. Of course, the development of dynamics, and to have concept for that, that's, I think, also a very important thing, thinking of apprentices, volunteers going abroad, to have comparable and sure situations. Everything should be done within the international network to feel, especially young persons on the move, safe wherever they go, and not only make them feel safe, but make them safe when they are working abroad. And I do think that transnational volunteering has an extremely high added value, at least potentially. And it could be an additional thing to not only think about youth mobility, but also about the mobility of other persons involved in the labor market and in teachers, for example. And of course, we have the topic of the recognition of volunteering in context with our mission to think about active citizenship. So that's a brief overview, and I stop here. 12 minutes, I think that's
perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening. Dziękuję.